times get hard, and we're here to help at NorthPoint.
Hello, welcome to another episode of NorthPoint Making Health Happen. My name is Lisa Castile, your host for the program. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This series is being brought to you by NorthPoint Health and Wellness Center. We want to connect with you about topics in health and wellness that impact our community, and we want to provide you with practical tips and resources you can use. Today we will be discussing health education, health coaching with one of our providers, Solange Monono, who is a health educator here at NorthPoint Health and Wellness Center. Solange is a national board certified health and well-being coach with over 12 years of experience as a wellness practitioner. With a master's degree in health education, she serves as an integrative health and wellness coach, specializing in chronic disease management. Solange works passionately with diverse populations, especially with minority communities, with a focus to empower individuals, enabling them to enhance their health and flourish despite challenging chronic conditions. Having witnessed the transformative impact of coaching throughout her extensive career, Solange finds profound joy in guiding individuals towards becoming the best version of themselves. She is passionate about encouraging individuals to actively engage in their health and well-being. Solange's dedication and passion led her to the Earl E. Barkin Center at the University of Minnesota, where she also shares her wealth of knowledge as a graduate faculty member in the integrative, thank you, integrative health and well-being coaching program. Here, she imparts her expertise to the next generation of health coaches, contributing significantly to the field of health and wellness coaching. Solange, welcome to our program today. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Now, you are from Cameroon.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was born in Cameroon, and I moved to the U.S. when I was a teenager, and I started high school here.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So you went to high school here where?
Mankato, Minnesota.
Mankato.
Actually. Yeah, it was really interesting because I moved from like 90-degree weather on the coast of Cameroon to like cold Minnesota. Mankato, Minnesota.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mankato is pretty cold. So how did you end up getting into this line of work? I'm curious.
You know, it was actually interesting because I started out as a pre-med student and I wanted to go to medical school, and but I got sick along the way, and halfway through my senior year in college, I decided, what's the point of trying to cure disease? It would be better to prevent it. And so I naturally went into the field of health, but I didn't know anything about health coaching. I think my dream had been to finish and then maybe teach health education programs. I think I really wanted to work for the WHO, and that's the World Health Organization, because I wanted to travel the world to fulfill both of my passions. And I just happened to stumble into health coaching. I went in for an interview as a health educator, and halfway through the interview, the manager looked at me and said, "I know you applied to be a health educator, but I think you'd be better as a health coach." And I thought, what is health coaching? And then I got to learn a little bit more about health coaching, and I started doing the work. And so I've done health coaching in a few areas. I think back in the day it was mostly in the corporate setting, and that's where I started. But I ended up in research, doing health coaching research for the VA and for the University of Minnesota, and then moving into the clinical world when I joined Fairview, and we started the health coaching program over there. But I always had a passion to work in the community. You know, I wanted to represent, I wanted to be in a space where there are people that looked like me, and also because I understood that my community didn't know much about health coaching. And so I always say I manifested it because somehow there was a job that opened at NorthPoint. I was like, oh yeah, I'm applying for this.
And now you're home.
And now I've been here for a while now.
How long have you been here with
So
NorthPoint?
8 years, actually.
8 years.
Yeah.
Amazing. And this work, it sounds like when, we talked and now hear what you're sharing, this was really a calling for you, Solange.
Yeah, pretty much.
You feel very passionate about it.
Well, I do. I wouldn't continue in health coaching knowing my personality if I didn't see how impactful it actually is. And that has to do with the fact that most of us know what we should be doing, right? I know I should probably exercise every single day, and or you probably know you should probably make better food choices. And yet, even though we know it, we don't do it, right? And so knowledge on its own doesn't usually translate to change. And so that's where people like me come in to help individuals find their own motivation for change so that they can be successful with the goals that they desire.
So tell me, I'm someone listening on the show today, how do I get connected to you, to a health coach? What is that like? What's that experience? What am I doing?
So at least here at NorthPoint, first you have to be a patient of NorthPoint. You have to belong here. And typically anybody, whether it's a doctor, a nurse, or care coordinator, can actually refer you to coaching. And so all you have to do is talk to your providers about the changes that you desire to make and ask to be referred to a health coach. Yeah, and usually when the referral comes to me, I reach out, call the person, and then set up an appointment, and we start working together.
Wonderful. So tell me, what is my appointment like? I come in, and what do we do?
Well, so first things first, health coaching is not like education where you come in and then, they kind of give you a full session of this is what you should be doing and this is what you should not be doing to manage your specific condition. And that's mostly because health coaching comes from the belief that people are the experts in their own health and well-being. They're the experts in their own lives. And so the first session typically starts with us just getting to know each other. We talk about the things that are important to the person. So let's say you were in my session. I'd be asking you questions about, okay, Elisa, what brought you here today? What is important to you about your health? What are some things that you want to change about it? So we'll be, talking about those things, and then also talking about things that keep you from actually meeting your goals. So a lot of times people think wellness is just as easy as eating healthy and exercising. But a lot of times in the field of health coaching, we always talk about other dimensions of health and well-being. And so a lot of times if we don't address those other dimensions, it might actually make it more challenging for you to meet your health and wellness goals.
Sure. So what might some of those challenges be? Can you share?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. When we talk about well-being, we look at physical well-being, which is what most people think about when they think of well-being. They usually think about exercise and eating healthy and maybe managing stress, right? But there's also social well-being, there's financial well-being, there's educational well-being, there's environmental well-being, and there's spiritual well-being. A lot of times, if one of these areas falls out of alignment, it can tend to affect the other areas. So if someone comes to me and let's say they have diabetes, and we've been telling them you have to eat healthy, but if they don't have the financial means to eat healthy, well, that's like knocking your head on wood because it's not going to work. And so usually we would address that area. So we'll address the roadblock, what is keeping that person from meeting their goals, and then go into, now that you've addressed this, we can now work on this specific health goal that you desire. So finances are a big one, right? And this is where education intersects health coaching. Now, you might want to change, but if you don't know how you should change, well, it's going to be difficult for you to change. And so getting the education needed to manage your specific health condition is also really important. But, there are lots of other socioeconomic things that come into play, like transportation. If I cannot get to my appointments, well, it might be challenging for me. So with health coaching, we try to make it easy. At least I try to make it easy so that people have multiple ways of connecting. So people can actually connect face-to-face, because some people prefer that. Some people prefer virtual appointments, and some people just prefer telephone appointments.
Wonderful. And then also, we've got some unique opportunities here at NorthPoint. Talk about some of the outreach things that you're doing.
So when I started here, I think about 2017, after I started, we started shared medical appointments, and shared medical appointments around hypertension. That's the group we started. Initially it was just one class, but now it's 3 classes. But it was born out of the desire to help our population better manage conditions that are just so endemic to our population up here in the north and just all over. And we were seeing a lot of people with hypertension that was uncontrolled, and we wanted to, you don't have a lot of time in your appointment with your doctor. Your doctor doesn't have 40-50 minutes to sit there explaining what that condition is to you. So we wanted to create a space that was welcoming, where people could come and learn and share experiences, as well as ask questions and gain the knowledge that they needed to manage their health and well-being. And so we started the shared medical appointment groups. And so these are specific to hypertension. And so usually in a group we have a medical doctor, we have a pharmacist, we have a dietitian, and then we have me, the health coach. So when people come to the groups, they're getting 4 for 1.
Wow, that's amazing. And then you're in an environment with other people who are dealing with this same health challenge. So, that vulnerability piece is kind of protected too, because it's funny because I have high blood pressure. I think I mentioned that to you, and I'm a diabetic. I've got the doubles. And when you first get diagnosed, it's very overwhelming. And I feel like, these type of groups that you've created, where you have your experts and then you have other people that are going through that same journey, is just, it's that integrated approach that we take here at looking at the whole person and addressing needs. That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because when we began the groups, it was just one group, right? But we heard from our patients, they wanted more. And that's something that's really important, to have these groups where we're not only providing the information, but we're also listening to the needs of our community. And so the feedback we received, people wanted more. They wanted a nutrition-specific group, but they also really wanted to learn more about, stress management, since that really affects hypertension. And so we eventually created these other 2 groups and added it to the initial first group. And so and during the process, we also recognized that what I shared before, just because you learn the information doesn't always translate to, okay, now I know the information, I'm going to change.
Right.
And so what we started offering after that is people can go through the hypertension groups, and then once they're done with the groups, they can enroll into health coaching to then now work one-on-one with a health coach so that they can come up with their own ways of changing.
Sure. And I would imagine that as a health coach, one of the things, because you've been doing this for a while now, is that you're able to, as the person is opening up to you, as our guest is opening up and sharing, you're actually able to make in-house referrals for things that are, I'm going to refer to them as barriers that would prevent them from leading a healthy lifestyle, right? Whether it's, like you mentioned, resources for transportation or nutrition or those sorts of things?
Absolutely. So, for example, if I'm working with someone and I notice that they have a significant gap in their knowledge for, say, nutrition, I would refer them to the dietitian so they can work one-on-one with them. And so they work collaboratively with me, and then they also work with the dietitian so they can get their educational needs met. Same thing, if I'm noticing that they do have a lot of questions about their medications, I would refer them to the pharmacist who can actually help them with that question.
Sure.
A lot of the work I do, I also see, a lot of mental health. So I'm also referring, we're talking about it together instead of just saying, I'm going to refer you to to behavioral health. Usually in health coaching, again, this is a collaborative appointment, and the person sitting in front of me gets to decide. They get to choose because they have autonomy to decide the direction in which they want to take with their health. And so, if I'm noticing some mental health issues coming up, I'll address it and then, encourage them to seek behavioral health because, that is outside of my scope of practice.
Sure. I want to talk about some of the populations that we serve too. We have a young audience, and, our listeners, maybe, we don't have a ton of young people listening, but they interact with young people. And I think health coaching is just such an important topic. You don't always think about that when you're young, but we know when we get older that, man, if we would have had those resources and that knowledge in our 20s, and this generation is facing so much with obesity and, all the technology they're being exposed to, all the social things that are happening with them. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I like to say you can use health coaching even with little kids. I always do that with my niece and nephew who are 4 and 6.
Okay.
And basically it's just listening, right? So the essence of health coaching is listening. Think about when you're talking to your best friend and they're telling you a really interesting story. You're all in, everything. And when you walk out of that conversation, you can recount word for word what your friend told you. But how many people actually get listened to like that? And so that's the baseline, that's the essence. So we start out with just listening, truly hearing, and then asking the right questions. Right? Asking those questions. I do think that, a lot of our young people are mostly focused on their phones these days. And, we don't, and even in our schools, we're not engaging them in a way that is meaningful to helping them improve their health. So the way I look at it, if I had my way, every school, even from grade school, will be incorporating health education into their curriculum. So that our kids are learning more about how to take better care of themselves, but also looking at how we can partner with parents, right? Partner with parents so that they're also learning, and then they can support that healthy behavior at home as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And health coaching, it can be very impactful, mostly because I don't know about you, but the teenagers and the young people I know don't really like being told what to do.
Yes, they
and
don't.
I think that we are told what to do all the time, but I
Yeah.
think creating a space where they themselves can come up with their own ideas,
Mm-hmm.
come up with their reasons for wanting to change, and then coming up with a plan for how they would like to change.
Sure.
I think that that can be really impactful.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that piece that you talk about, that active listening, because I know I have a 24-year-old, and so I know my young adult, I've transitioned from always telling her what to do and advising her to being there to support and allowing her to navigate, like, what do you think you should do in this situation? And just letting her talk about stuff. She just wants to talk about things, not have me solve things. And so I think that's
Exactly.
important.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you got it. That was a perfect open question.
Yeah.
And that would allow your young adult to talk more. And I think people inherently have the answers. And I think that's, if you look at the difference between health coaching and health education, I like to look at it as there's a difference in a power dynamic, where in health education the educator has all the power, and they have the answers, they have the solutions, and they give that to you. But in health coaching, we say the client has all the power. They know the answers, it's deep within them, and it's just the job of the coach to help them draw it out.
I love that. Wow, that's beautiful. That is a wonderful approach. Well, let's talk a little bit about having clients stay motivated to overcome setbacks on their health journey.
Isn't that just everybody's challenge?
Yes, it is. It is such a challenge. As this morning, as a diabetic, I saw those pastries in the studio over there, and of course, I just had to have one. And I told myself I'm going to not have sugar today, but hey, that's real.
That's
right?
real.
That's real.
That's real life. And so one of the things I hear all the time is, "Oh, Solange, I set this goal. I just wasn't motivated, or I've been wanting to lose weight. I just haven't found the motivation to do it." But I think people have that backwards, right? And so usually when someone tells me that, my next question is, how long have you been waiting for motivation to show up for you to change? And a lot of times people will laugh and say 10 years, since my last baby,
Yeah.
And the truth is, we don't need motivation to achieve our goals. We just need to take a step. And so I think when we start thinking about motivation, we think we have to have everything set and we have to have everything in place for us to take a step forward towards our own goals. And yet, we do know that there is no greater motivator than success. And so if I were to start taking baby steps, right? If I take one little step, even if that step was, I am just going to go to bed at like 10 o'clock instead of 11, right? When I start making these changes, so now I'm waking up the next morning, I'm feeling much better.
Yeah.
Well, my motivation will begin to increase.
Sure.
So the more we can achieve small goals, the greater our motivation will become for us to achieve greater goals.
I love that. Yeah, small scale victories.
Yes.
Right? And there's some famous quote, I don't know who said this. It sounds like it was an astronaut, but I don't know. But the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Yeah.
Have you heard that before?
I have heard that before.
Yes, that's what you're talking about right
Yeah.
here. I love that.
Yeah. And
Very
I think
affirming.
when you look at the sheer amount of things people have to change, change can become so overwhelming.
Yes.
And And then you become like the deer with the headlights. So you're frozen because you're overwhelmed by the amount of change you have to make. And yet, if we can forego the need to change everything at one time and just start with one thing, eventually you'll be looking back. You'd look back and say, wow, look at how far I've come.
Wow. So how do you keep yourself motivated and energized in this work?
Oh, I always laugh and say, oh, I feel like a leech.
A leech.
Yeah, because, I don't know anybody who has a job like mine, but most health coaches will tell you every time a person we're working with shows up and says, oh my goodness, I remember I couldn't even walk up the stairs. And now I am walking up the stairs without having to catch my breath. Okay. Wow, that success. I get so joyful. And but working at NorthPoint, I think was probably the best decision I made. Yeah. Because I see people who show up in my sessions and they're so overwhelmed. They have, like you, they have diabetes to manage, and they have hypertension and high cholesterol, and they're trying to work on weight. And I'm saying, let's just pick one. Yes. And then they start with one thing, and then they start making little changes. I'll give you an example. I had this one patient who I've been working with for a while, and they started out with just a few minutes of exercise. Okay. And their goal was weight loss. And they couldn't do 3 minutes of exercise when they started. And yet, I encouraged them to keep up with the 3 minutes. And at some point, they moved up to 5 minutes. And at some point, they went up to 7, and they continued. And today, that person is actually able to walk for 60 to 90 minutes.
No. Oh my gosh. Yeah. From 3 minutes.
From 3 minutes.
To 90 minutes.
Yes. It took a while.
Patience.
Right?
Yeah.
It took a while, but it is that firm commitment to your own self and having someone to support you through that process without judgment. Right. That allows people to be able to break through those barriers and thrive and achieve the goals that they do want to. And so for me, that is joyful. Yeah. It is joyful to see people go from I can't to I can. And not just I can, I am. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's amazing. Solange, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. Our listeners have been rewarded with your wisdom and your gentle approach and your affirming attitude that you have about this.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for inviting me, and I really appreciate it. It's actually a privilege to share what I do here at NorthPoint, and that's because even till today, most people in our communities don't really know what a health coach does, and most people don't get an opportunity to work with a health coach, and so, I do hope that more and more people in our communities will actually learn more about the profession, because I think we could use more health coaches of color or minority health coaches in general. We don't have a lot, and my hope is that as more people learn about this field, it is an emerging field, and I'm hoping that we'll have many health coaches.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and I appreciate being here.
Thank you for listening to this week's Making Health Happen. We want you to know that we're here to partner with you and to help make health happen in your life. To learn more about NorthPoint, call us at 612-543-2500 or visit us on the web at northpointhealth.org.